Yeah, and then he was like, here's a few of my influences: the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. I really like Neutral Milk Hotel. And I'm like, oh, okay.
You're talking about the guy who shot Reagan?
Yeah, Hinckley.
Yeah. I saw some of his tweets for a while without realizing who he was. I was just like, oh.
This Hinckley guy's all right.
You're tall, but I'm standing in front of you.
It's a podcast.
Welcome to You're Tall, but I'm Standing in Front of You, the podcast where two friends circling the drain of academia examine the cultural detritus of the 20th century. I'm Devin.
I'm Ethan.
And we are joined today by a good friend of ours, a former bandmate, creative director of Team Coco. It's Matt Powers, everybody.
Hey, what's going on? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
This is my first pod experience, my first pod guesting experience. So I'm not nervous. I'm excited, but if I'm doing something wrong, just let me know.
Absolutely.
Oh, we will.
And don't be nice about it. Be quite rude.
No, we
about
won't.
It.
We won't.
Fantastic. That could have been ruder. It could have been ruder.
Punch up the rudeness for the second half of the pod, Ethan. All right, so we just had our live react pod about Dune last week. We have just come back from seeing Marvel's The Eternals, and we're ready to do our live reaction pod.
It is a Dune level cinematic event.
That movie's already out?
No.
Oh, okay.
No,
I was like, what the hell? Like, we'll have your old pal Matt on for the obscure Canadian movie no one's ever heard in between Dune, like taking the two biggest movies of the year.
No, we just, we're having our biggest guests we've ever had, probably our biggest guest we ever will have, and we were just like, how can we squander this opportunity?
Dude, my fans travel, man. My fans will be all over this podcast. It's gonna be crazy.
But the real reason we have Matt on, we're getting in the holiday spirit. We're doing a bit of a like spooky, spooktacular episode. And we watched the movie Pontypool, directed by Bruce McDonald. It's a Canadian movie. It's a kind of like radio play horror movie in a weird way. It's almost a zombie movie. It's from 2008. And we're going to get into that shortly. But before we did, I wanted to just kind of, to get into the mood of the season, just kind of ask like what everyone's like Halloween vibe is. Are you guys big Halloween people? Are you big horror movie fans? What are your favorite horror movies?
If it counts, I'd probably say like The Thing.
Absolutely, that's top of me too. What about you, Matt?
I love that. I hate that we're just agreeing on everything, but I also like The Thing. What else? I'm trying to think. I really liked. I have not seen it since I was 12, but I really liked The Ring when it came out. It scared the hell out of me. It's like to the point to like that no other movie has. So I feel like I even if it was however old I was when that came out, I don't remember. I saw it in the theater and it definitely was some sleepless nights. So I want to give The Ring a shout out. Also like I just feel like there's something spooky about like those like CRT TVs with like the giant backs, like the static, like that's just such a, that I feel, I don't know if you show that movie to someone who is under 23, do they like even, are they like, what the fuck is this? I don't know. But that was freaking. She crawls out of that screen and all that stuff, and like the fly, they pick the fly off the screen. I like horror movies. I find they're more fun to watch with people.
Yeah.
Like watching a horror movie by yourself can be fun, but I don't know. To me, it's you just sort of want to be able to like share that experience. Otherwise, you're just like, oh, I'm watching people get murdered by myself. I don't know. It's just like there's something about it that's a little strange when you do it by yourself. But yeah, it's a cool genre.
Yeah, and I think that's part of why like horror movies, like they generally don't make a lot of money, but studios pump them out because they have a really high floor, right? Like the average horror movie, it like very rarely loses money, right? And I think it's like, it's partly because like a lot of times people go to see a horror movie, it's not that they've been hoodwinked and they think it's like some great thing, but I think they're just trying to get that collective experience you're talking about, Matt. Like,
right, yes, like being freaked out together. But that's why it is funny. I always find it very interesting when there's like an auteur horror movie that comes out and everyone's like, oh, this one's really good. Hereditary. This one's gonna blow your mind. Hereditary didn't really do it for me. Hereditary was like a really fun, like first, in fact, this might be my critique of Pontypool as well, like a really fun first half. That then completely you just go like, okay, like I don't know, it kind of falls off. Like that creepy little girl was so the mood of that movie was so good, and I was like, oh my god, this movie's gonna be awesome, and then it just sort of like falls off a little bit. But yeah, I always think it's funny when like there's the auteur. I'm trying to think of other examples. I guess everything that guy does, Midsommar.
Oh yeah, same guy. The Witch, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's the same. That's the same. Yeah, I guess every time he does a horror movie, it's like it's considered like it's like a capital L literary. I'm not.
Yeah, he does a lot of research.
Yeah.
The fucking Witch ends with a bibliography.
Yeah. Not to jump to Pontypool, I know we got some more preamble, but I almost want to start with the post credit scene.
Oh yeah, we got to talk about the after credit scene. I do think we should go through the plot first, maybe, but Pontypool, right? Let's get into it.
Yeah.
And so just to watch the movie if you want to know what happens before we talk about it. As always, I don't think we need to do spoiler alerts on this thing, Ethan. I think like if you're listening to this pod, we
how dare you?
But yeah. But just to give a brief overview of the plot in Pontypool, to the extent there is one, right? So it takes place in the town of Pontypool in Ontario, Canada. This is a real town. And we open with this kind of like shock jock radio guy. His name is Grant Mazzy. And he's kind of like driving to work. He's listening to himself on the radio, right? There's kind of this weird disjunction because it's like, and he like has like an argument with his manager on his cell phone in the car. So we get some like exposition about who he is. But then he's also on the radio in the car. So it's like, how is this happening? How is it broadcasting his voice if he's not there yet? Right. But he's driving into work. It's a big snowstorm. His car gets kind of stopped by this woman who's kind of like banging on the glass. He, I think, rolls the window down, and she's just kind of repeating the word blood over and over again. And he's like, do you need help or something? And she just kind of like wanders off. So it's like, we've got that like, as horror movies often do, that early indication that like something's not quite right. But then he like goes into work, and then it kind of becomes like almost like a workplace comedy briefly, like and it's this small town radio show, and we realize like it's like no one wants to show up to work too early, so it's like he pre-records the first part of the show, so that's like what's going on with the simultaneous being in the car and on the radio. There's two other characters in the radio station. There's Laurel Ann, who is like the tech person, and they mention is an Iraq or it was an Afghanistan veteran,
hometown hero,
Afghanistan war veteran.
I would say that's mentioned many times.
Yeah, and that we got to get into like what the hell is this film trying to say about like terrorism? And then there's also Sydney Breyer, who's like the station manager. And it's kind of then like Grant Mazzy gets on the mic and he's doing just this kind of like morning radio shit. Sydney Brier doesn't seem to like him that much, or like we get the implication he's kind of new to the town. Like maybe he was like a bigger deal and he's kind of gotten downgraded, and now he's like doing radio in this very small rural town. And she's like, he's trying to do all these bits, and she's like in his ear, like, the bit's not working. The bit's not working, Grant. Stop it. We get kind of like a couple like weird reports start rolling into the radio station. Like there's like masses of people forming. It's not quite clear what's going on. There's this guy, Ken Loney, who ostensibly is the traffic reporter in a chopper, though it's later revealed he just like sits in his car at a hill and like cosplays that he's in a helicopter.
Yeah. I did like that detail.
Yeah.
And like basically it's almost like a radio play that's being filmed from inside the radio station. Like the film's really interested in like how actually is radio made. And it's basically like, we don't get any visuals of what's going on in the outside world, but we're getting these like kind of reports generally that like something's up, and like it kind of has this like zombie apocalypse vibe, right? This kind of comes to a head when there's this weird like interjection in French over the radio signal that like you are not supposed to speak in English. You're not supposed to use terms of endearment. You're not supposed to use rhetorical discourse, whatever that is. And then at the end, as Grant Mazzy is reading the translation of the message on the radio, and do not translate this message.
Which I think, I'm sorry to jump in, I think that was the high watermark of the movie, right? When he reads that. Because I was like, that's cool. I was like, that was cool.
Yeah. And then like, the next big thing that like happens is the arrival of this guy, Dr. John Mendez, who's been previously alluded to as he's the doctor that this mob is forming outside the offices of. He shows up and like a typical academic makes no sense. Says a bunch of stuff about here's how the way this like zombie virus works. And we basically, to the degree we ascertain what he's saying, it's that this is a virus that transmits via language. He starts like ranting in Armenian so as to like stave off the virus, which apparently takes
that was Armenian?
Yeah, he's an Armenian actor, and that is Armenian, yeah. The Afghanistan war veteran woman, she gets infected with the virus, and they like hide in the sound booth. She ends up just kind of like vomiting up her insides and dying because, as Dr. Mendez tells us, the infected want to suicide, but they have to have, quote, a victim to suicide into, whatever that means. There's this amazing sequence where like they don't know what else to do, so Grant Mazzy starts listing like obituaries for all the people that have died in the apocalypse, and it's like all these like black and white shots of people, and he's just like so and so was like survived briefly by her husband who had killed her, who then killed the children, and such and such.
See, that to me is the high water mark of the film. It could have just ended there, and it would have been like, that's funny.
Yeah, no, I thought that.
Don't worry, I actually did like that scene. The only reason it's not the high water mark for me is because Dr. Exposition crawls in and walks in, crawls in and basically explains everything that's happening, and the characters just go, okay. Like it's the craziest idea that's ever been. That is yes, that is what is happening. Correct.
I appreciate the brazenness of that, though. Like, how do we explain the sort of thing we're trying to describe with this movie? Let's literally have a character coming through the window and lay out.
It's such a failure of writing to do stuff like that, where it's just like literally I did think it was funny how he crawls in and out of the building. Like his entrance and exit of this movie it's very funny. He like just finds a random window, he like crawls in, but it's like so like they had made this cool movie. It was moody, it was weird. They were like not showing anything. Theater of the mind, very cool. And then there's like, fuck, we gotta like explain what's happening to have this incredibly like overwrought second half between these two characters. Sorry, Devin, you were on a roll there, but
no, it's all good. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I let's like brief on this a little bit, because before we get the coda, because like I think it's interesting, because I think what the film's trying to do with that Mendez character is actually like critique the explanation almost, because like I think they're trying to have him, like, to me he's like this parody of an academic who like has all this information in his head but like can't actually get it across to anyone, you know, and like I kind of read the sort of like almost like parodic level of like acceptance of the other characters of this like unthinkable like process, because this virus is basically like it's like Jacques Derrida invented a virus or something, right? Like it's like all the stuff you vaguely remember from your English BA, or unfortunately as an English PhD student have to remember all the time, is like made into a horror movie conceit. And then this guy shows up and he explains it, and everyone's just like, well, okay, sort of, we get it. It's something to do with language. And then he just starts babbling, and then they get out of the booth and they're just like, should we kill him? For seemingly no reason. They're just like, kill the doctor.
Well, they think he's infected, right? Because he's babbling.
Yeah, but he's babbling in Armenian, and they don't understand that it's like it's an English language specific virus.
Well, you have such a more generous interpretation of this movie than I do. In that, like, the fact that you would invoke Derrida or like English theory, like
have you not listened to our podcast? He invokes Derrida.
No, I've been friends with I've known Devin for many years. I know, but to me, this is just like a fairly like sleazy like paint job of like talk radio is bad. Like it's like there's literally the line of like talk radio is high risk. It's like reporting stuff without knowing you're saying. The need to always be on the air is what it gets people angry. It's like they're constantly hitting this point over and over. It's 2008 that like people are getting angry. Like he looks like Don Imus. He's wearing the cowboy hat. Like he is Don Imus. Firing people up and like, oh, I'm gonna get people, and he has that whole thing in the beginning was like, you got to get people angry, because angry people tell their brother, they get angry. He tells his wife, they get angry. And it's like, like I almost to the point feel I'm being too hard on it, because in 2008 that point might have been interesting, but in 2021 that point is the least interesting thing because it's the most played out thing. But and not to say that obviously your reading of it is less valid or not right. I just, like, to me, watching this movie would like, and I saw that like, there's always like helicopters. There's like this Afghanistan imagery. Like children are dying, and they cut to the soldier. It's just like very like it's like, see, this is all fucked up, and like we're letting ourselves get angry from talk radio, and like that to me was like what I got out of this movie. And once that happened, I just was like, oh no, which is sort of like where I left. and then like the kisses kill whatever, it like is so like it was so overwrought. It was almost interesting to me, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, it was I agree with the overall like theme and the overemphasis on like the talk radio bad, to the point where this is probably just me. I don't know if you're supposed to end the movie feeling this way, but I was like, one, was this just a fevered dream of like Grant Mazzy having a stroke? Because when that doctor came in the window, I'm like, okay, this is absurd. And he becomes like the hero of the story. So I wonder, like, to what extent is this a fever dream?
Yeah.
Or like the other alternative was I was kind of wondering, is Grant Mazzy actually the carrier of the virus that's transmitting it to everybody? Because the in French they were saying like he's infected over the loudspeaker towards the end. I was kind of wondering partway through if the whole narrative that is presented in the story is not actually what's happening, and it's just the talk radio guy literally infecting people over the air.
Yeah, and he really thinks of himself as like outside of it and kind of reporting on it objectively, right? But just to briefly finish up the plot summary before we get into all this stuff, which is great. Yeah, so basically they end up in a room. Sydney Brier starts getting drunk. Grant Mazzy comes up with some theories about like how you make the word not mean anything, and that's a way of like curing the virus. And then like as Matt was saying, there's like this scene where like Sydney Brier kind of seems to be infected. Oh, I should also mention they've like beaten a child to death.
But a child in brownface. That's I will say that's like if we skip that scene, that the musical number is maybe the best scene in the entire movie.
Yeah, no, I didn't put it in the plot summary, but I want to talk about Lawrence and the Arabians, like the brownface choral group or whatever the fuck they are. One of whom, by the way, Lawrence from Lawrence and the Arabians, is played by the guy who wrote the novel that this movie is based on.
Wow.
So anyway, they've beaten a child to death. They have this argument about who actually beat the child to death, which we really don't know because it kind of happens off screen, or like we just see them stomping. So we don't know like who died, or we don't know who literally killed the child, I guess. They end up in like the back room. Who knows? I don't know. She gets drunk. Like she gets seemingly infected. He just keeps saying kill is kiss to her over and over again until it's like, oh, because I guess kill is bad and kiss is good and they sound similar. She's not infected anymore. They go back in, they start
Excuse me.
Yeah, you missed them. You gotta say her line. You gotta say her line.
Wait, what's the line I'm missing?
She says, Mazzy, kill me. And then
which means kiss me.
Oh,
come on, Devin.
I don't believe
you still got a heart beating in that tweed ass jacket, right? Come on.
Yeah, they kiss. There's like romantic stuff now. They go back in and they start broadcasting because he's like, I'm gonna solve this via broadcasting, like kind of like beat poetry or whatever. Like I'm gonna be the William S. Burroughs of Shock Jock Radio, and I'm gonna change everybody's minds. And then, like as Ethan was saying, like this helicopter intercom is just like he's infected, all in French, right? And there's actually like a countdown from 10 that they're like gonna bomb them, and then like the movie cuts to the credits. We get weird news footage over the credits implying that like this virus, despite this, is spreading. And then we get the aforementioned like crazy scene. It's like a black and white. Well, it eventually shifts to color, but it's like a black and white. The two characters looking straight at the camera. They're dressed completely differently. It has this almost like Tarantino vibe for me,
Very
like
much.
Kill Bill kind of thing or something. And like, I don't know, there's just weird dialogue, and it's like the same actors as Sydney and Grant, but it's like he's called Johnny Deadeyes and she's called Lisa the Killer, and it has this like pulpy assassin thing. And then it ends. So Pontypool, ladies and gentlemen.
It ends with the word Finn.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Oh, it's like, I should say they were like, there's periods where they're like speaking French to each other, right? Because it is in Canada, so like people speak some amount of French, different people, and
at one point she literally apologizes via writing after killing the kid. She's like, I killed a child. I'm sorry. Like, oh, come on.
Yeah. Well, she writes it over and over again too. Like it's weird. Like I noticed this watch through. The film doesn't clearly skip ahead in time. Like it doesn't give us an indication it's doing so. But at some point you can just see behind Sydney in the shots of her that the walls are completely covered.
They're covered.
So like they've been in here way longer than it, like, I think if you're not looking at the walls, you would think they're in there for like 10, 15 minutes, but they're in there seemingly for a really long time. And yeah, so it's like either everybody died or like everybody became weird Tarantino assassins, I guess, depending on, or it was all a dream. I don't know, depending on how you look at it. That's Pontypool, folks.
Well done. Well, that's a good summation.
Thanks.
I'm such a good listener to the worst parts of my mind. All these fuckers come at me every time I step outside. Everything I should know, I don't wanna
mean, I don't have much more to say about it other than that. It did like, it was a very, like with the Afghan war veteran character, and like I in my mind, all of the like audio imagery that they were trying to impart, especially like the helicopters and the screaming, was like, it was like, I mean, honestly, there's maybe a reading where this whole thing's a PTSD dream of hers,
Yeah.
where like because it's like, I think it's meant to invoke that like this war is happening, like this is happening to real people. This war is happening, like even though we're the ones talking about it in the abstract, it's actually happening right here.
Yeah, and she has a line at some point, right, where she Laurel Ann is talking to Sydney, and Sydney asks her like kind of like evoking her status as a veteran and a hero in this town, like, have you ever seen anything like this before or whatever? And I can't remember the exact line, but do you have anything?
So did anything this crazy ever happen to you in Afghanistan? And she said, no, sir, I leave the situation I brought back in my head. And that's like her kind of cue that she gets infected.
But then I think they said, what does that mean? And she says, I don't know.
Yeah, she does.
And that's right before, then she almost immediately after that is like infected, right? And
yeah.
I believe this is also the scene where the book Snow Crash is featured prominently. I love it when movies do this. I didn't
notice that.
The Snow Crash, when they're talking and they're making tea in that scene, the book Snow Crash is like perfectly played. It's like not even on a bookshelf. It's just like sitting on a table while they're talking. I don't know. I was like looking into Snow Crash. It was like, certainly there must be trying to allude to something here. But I always love it when movies are just like, huh? Like,
yeah.
Well, this the way Matthew talks from the jump is incredibly like bespoke, and not the way anyone talks. Like the way when he's talking about how Pontypool, like that first monologue is incredibly like dense, and like sort of like I think purposely, and like in a way where I was like, this movie's gonna rule, because it's like it's like knocks you off your foot. It puts you on your back foot when that movie starts. I think you're zooming in on like the audio wave, and it's like a little kind of like upsetting almost. You hear this guy talking about this thing. You're like, what is that? Like, we're looking for this cat. Like, I actually would love to talk about the cat, because like I didn't know if it was supposed to be like sort of like a Schrodinger's cat sort of situation where it's like, is the cat missing? Is the cat found? Is the virus like is the virus a thing or not a thing? It's like, it depends on like what, because he keeps talking in that opening monologue about like things have already happened, but they haven't happened yet. I will fully admit it. I watched it twice. That part, it felt like I was like a little over my head. I felt like my brain was like, I'm just like too dumb to like quite connect it, but like my brain was like trying so hard and I couldn't get there.
Like, and he opens with like kind of these weird, kind of like he's doing these different puns and like linguistic plays with the name of the town and how it like kind of evokes these past historical events that have happened. And he talks about the cat and stuff, but like the visual we're getting during this opening monologue is just of like his sound waves, right? Like, and that sort of like visualization of audio, right, is something like I think like the film is really interested in, because it essentially is almost like a radio play. Like, you don't really need the visuals, and like this could basically play on the radio and it would more or less make sense. Like, there's not really anything that happens visually that we need to see. But like, I think the film is very interested in like, what are the processes through which these like disseminated oral information kind of like becomes visual, right? And like one of the ways we see that is Lawrence and the Arabians, right? Who are like this, it's like kind of a throwaway scene. So like I didn't really mention it in the plot summary, but it's like really important, I think, to what we've been talking about, where like Grant Mazzy wants to talk about the story that's developing, but they're like, no, we've booked Lawrence and the Arabians. They have to come in. And it's like this, like a cappella group that is like a guy kind of dressed as Lawrence of the Arabia, all white people, obviously. A guy dressed as Osama bin Laden with like a gun, and then like children in brown face. And then there's like an older lady all dressed in kind of like stereotypical like Middle Eastern garb, and they're singing like, what are they even singing? Like kind of like weird songs about like the Middle East and Christmas or something. I don't know, like, which actually the movie's set on Valentine's Day, which is weird because it kind of has this like, it has these evocations of both Halloween by being a horror movie and like Christmas with the like the weather and stuff, but right, like this is like this like parody visualization of like the image, the ideas about the Middle East that have been disseminated on media at this period in time, right? Like, and like he's talking to, while this is happening, Grant Massey is talking to his manager that he's fired earlier on the phone, and like the Osama bin Laden guy sings, and he's like, "That's Osama bin Laden." And he's like holding up the phone to him. He's like, "Fuck you, Rick," and he hangs up. But it's almost like it's like the film saying at that point that there is no difference, I feel like, between the real Osama bin Laden, whoever that is, and this like idea that's being disseminated in the media, and that becomes available for like parody and costume and remixing or whatever.
Interesting, because I was sort of looking at that scene and you're seeing like, well, through the filter of this like this talk radio, you're not actually like, they can't see that this is Osama bin Laden, it's just a voice. And so there's context that him point. As the person who is inviting these people on has the context that then is filtered out through the like oral discourse, so through the radio waves.
Yeah, to me that was just another sort of like thing that supports the the war isn't real to Canada, the US, like the Western, like it doesn't matter. It's just sort of like this like joke kind of, or like this thing that's happening elsewhere, and we like lampooning. It's okay to wear brown face because these people aren't people, like these are foreign adversaries. And the fact that like no one blinks an eye, and I also thought it was interesting. It kind of supports Ethan's fever dream thing, because they like shuffle in, they don't talk to anybody. They walk in, like they don't talk to the producer. They just sort of walk in, and then the producer goes, "Yeah, got to put these people on." They go and they don't talk to him, and then they just sort of leave. And like it is but they don't leave because that girl stays. She gets infected. And I think she gets infected at the end of the song. She starts talking in a weird way, and he goes like, and he's like, "This is weird, go away." Again, another cool part of the scene. We're like, whoa, this like crazy, like racist sort of like musical thing just happened. This little girl who clearly isn't old enough to like have consented to be part of this like charade, is now like talking weird. And it kind of maps with that woman who was knocking on his door, his window earlier. And it really sets that mood really well. And again, I'm not to rehash where I feel like where it goes, but that to me, it was all leading up to that high watermark.
Yeah, and I think like you're making me think about like the different ways, different kinds of media, and also different genres are at play in this, right? Because like this movie's like it's very situated in a particular perspective, right? And so I think it's like it's not necessarily important, I think, if we determine like diegetically, is this literally like a fever dream of any given character or not? But it's like, it's certainly not realism, right? Like it's like a representation of like this, as it happens, Canadian, which I'm just sort of like overcoding as American because I don't know the particularities of the Canadian perspective on the war on terror, but I'm basically presuming that the Canadian perspective is like the US perspective with like a little more politeness and like gravy. But like in this like weird musical number, right? It's like you were saying, like it's a joke to Canada, right? Like this shit that's going on in the Middle East at this time is like presented as like a joke and also like a musical, like this very like lighthearted genres, right? But then like as this stuff starts happening in Canada, that is like similar to what's going on in the Middle East, like indiscriminate death, people being killed for unclear reasons, top-down government intervention, indiscriminate bombing, et cetera, it becomes a horror movie, right? And it's like the only way the realism of what's going on in the Middle East can be registered in like the Canadian context or like the North American context is to make it a horror movie, right? And it almost becomes like a bad horror movie. It becomes like a silly horror movie, but that almost like highlights to me the degree to which this is like the North American like episteme or whatever doesn't have the tools to actually represent the reality of what's going on in like the Middle East, for example. Like I don't know if you guys buy that or not. I'm kind of like I'm like the Pontypool defender on the pod, right? Because I both recommended it, and just just to put my cards on the table, I think this movie rules. Right. But I also was like high as balls when I saw it the first time. So like, might be wrong, but
I think it's a very interesting read. Like I don't know. It's not quite. I do think you're giving this movie too much credit, to be honest with you. I think it's like a little baser than that. But I think the director should buy you a drink for for saying all that, because it's very smart and it's very interesting. I just like to me it's just like simple. Like it's like when the BBC guy calls in and is talking to Grant Mazzy, and basically this guy, and even the producer, she's like, oh, he's good, because he's like saying nothing. He's like he's like kind of like making his own points without any backup to Mazzy, and which like kind of like furthers the like confusion and like the talk radio, like kind of like fear machine. So to talk about how the Middle East, the North America can't understand what's happening in the Middle East outside of like a shitty horror movie. I don't know. Maybe I like that point. I think it's interesting. I just don't see the authorial and moves there from this director to get there. But that's just one man's opinion.
I did do a little research with the director of this film. And there was
with him. You both went to the library together to research something.
Yeah, checked out this. And what else did they have in the library? Goosebumps.
Learned about the War of 1812.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We won. Don't let anyone tell you any different.
I went down to the basement to check out some microfilm, and I solved a few murders from the 1980s while they were there. It was no big deal, but
so I was looking at some of the commentary from the director, trying to get an idea of perhaps what is his take on what this whole film is about. And he describes the virus as such. He says there are 3 stages to this virus. The first stage is you might begin to repeat a word, something gets stuck. The second stage is your language becomes scrambled and you can't express yourself properly. And the third stage is you become so distraught at your condition that the only way out of the situation you feel as an infected person is to try and chew your way through the mouth of another person. So I guess the virus just turns you into a postmodernist.
or it turns you into like a QAnon person, right? I don't know. Like, it's really hard for me to like watch this movie now without thinking of QAnon, thinking of like fake news shit. I guess my New York, to recall your Dune review, my New York Post headline is like Pontypool period, poor ? Prophetic ! But what do you guys think about that? Like this film, like looking back on this film in the context of like kind of these very palpable, like kind of social media, like internet conspiracies and like information disseminating against anyone's like active will kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, I was kind of saying this earlier. I think it's like unfair to like this movie feels lame. I think feels a little lame because of what we've been through. And like it's so passe to say social media changes your mind. Social media turns you into a conspiracy theorist where you reject people are eating bleach because like, how did we get here? Why are people eating bleach, drinking bleach to get rid of COVID? That's obviously dumb. But yeah, we've arrived where like this is like a real problem that's happening. And I think like the steps Ethan was talking about of like you start repeating a word, you become incoherent, and then you literally like you see someone's status, you post you make it your status, that's you eating their face, and then they eat someone else's face. And again, it is what he says at the beginning where he's like, you just have to make someone angry, then they make their brother angry, then they make their wife angry, and then you have a dedicated listener base. So I think this movie is like does deserve credit. I don't want to be too negative because I think this movie does a lot of cool things, and I think it probably deserves more credit than I'm giving it for. like realizing that like talk radio is actually not just like the funny like, oh, aren't like, isn't Rush Limbaugh done on this, like aren't those people just like idiots that we can laugh at, which was like the Daily Showification of these things. Like Jon Stewart is just going to take a clip of Rush Limbaugh saying something and then him contradicting himself, and then just kind of like look wide at the camera, and the audience is going to laugh, and then they're going to go home and watch CNN and do their thing. So maybe this movie was sort of like a, actually that's like you're almost letting them off the hook by just being like, isn't this silly? It's like, no, this is actually serious and has real world ramifications.
Yeah, and the way you put that makes me think about like, I feel like that Daily Show critique, right, is very rooted in like what the person's saying, like the specific thing, right? Like you said, like they clip out, like here's something they said that's wrong, right? I feel like this film is more critiquing the system of dissemination. Like it's not even necessarily what specific things Grant Mazzy says. They're not really that important. They're not even that interesting, right? But it's like this whole apparatus that's kind of beyond any one individual's control of like just like disseminating information and like the inability to control the spread, right? But then that also has like, I don't know, maybe that just has like a kind of very like kind of conservative reactionary dimension too, where it's just like, back in the day we just like read books by the fire. I don't know, like I don't know what this film, I don't know if this film has like a positive vision beyond saying just like, yeah, shit's really bad.
Well, I think this is critiquing it only because it's like they're constantly being like, keep it going, and then he's mad because he has to do this podunk town because he presumably, I don't say it, but presumably he gets fired from his bigger job because he said something too controversial, and so now I'm assuming, so which is why, or he drinks too much and is too controversial, so he shows up at this one, and like the small town producer, she's like trying to get him to like, no, don't do the pot growers. Like we like the pot growers. Don't say that they're gonna like start a war when you throw the ball through the window or whatever. So I think I do think that it is saying that like the need to always be on the air is ultimately, and like I wrote down a quote that I thought was very instructive of this, or very emblematic of this movie, where he says. And I want to also nominate this for most overwritten line of the movie. Mazzy says, do we really want to provide a genocide with elevator music, when she says, don't go on the air? And then he says, stop understanding and listen to me, which is like, I think like the overall, like, don't try to put this together, just listen to my voice and I will guide you. And like, I think that's ultimately what the Don Imus, Rush Limbaugh people are offering. And there is like, sometimes I'm jealous because I think there's a real piece to that. Like imagine just driving and commuting every day, listening to Rush Limbaugh tell you what to be mad about and tell you it's like, as long as you're mad about this stuff, it's all gonna be fine. We have the truth that we'll get there. Whereas like you listen to someone, if you're left leaning, you might listen to someone, everyone's just like, well, everything's fucked. And like, man, it's intractable and everything's gonna be bad forever. Versus you might listen to radio where it's like, things are bad, but like the warriors of conservatism will like bring about the Pax Romana of America or bring it back. And yes, this stuff's coded in racism, sexism, classism, and all these very bad things. And not to give like the Biden Democrats off the hook that they're not those things too, because they absolutely are, just to different extents. So like, but the vision, like they're so good at providing a message on the right that like it does sound comforting almost to just be like,
but it's like you said, where it can happen on the right, like with Tucker Carlson, or on the far left, like Chris Cuomo.
I
can't. The firebrand, the communist agitator Chris Cuomo.
Yeah.
But that's the whole problem, right? Because like the left, like the actual left, right, can't do this, right? Because like the power of the left comes from like analytical clarity and like materialist analysis and like uncovering like what are the actual like structural conditions of what's going on, right? And it's at least like there's a much higher degree of difficulty for the left to come up with a narrative that can take on this kind of virality that the one in Pontypool does, which is just like if you get mad, just like murder the nearest person next to you, right? Like just destroy everything around you. And It makes me think of all these people. I don't know if you guys remember, these went kind of like viral online a while ago, but there were all these like QAnon guys like eating Thanksgiving dinner alone because no one in their family wanted to talk to them. And it was like these photos of like their Thanksgiving dinner. And it was just like, like a hungry man dinner, or like a peanut butter sandwich or whatever. But it was like, the like moral clarity of, but I'm on the right side of history kind of thing. Like much harder to access that from the left, I think.
So I'm starting to think I might have a conjecture with the end credits scene.
Oh
yeah. Should we move to that?
Because it seems like what this film is saying thematically is, on one hand, you can have this kind of spewing nonsense from the mouth nonstop, the kind of talk radio person that Grant Mazzy is. But with that end credit scene, it seems like the way that they've been able to survive the repercussions of that is to literally only be able to communicate through this hokey, preconceived, predictable form of language that comes across as just really annoying. And so is the theme of the movie that like either you let this talk radio world exist where they say these things with all these dangerous repercussions, or you don't. But if you don't, the only alternative is that everyone literally needs to go by the books and say the right things. Is it political correctness that they're angry? I don't know. It's just, I'm trying to read that end credits scene.
It's so hard to figure out what's going on with that. Do you have any ideas, Matt? Or
I still, and this is probably like not very like generous of me, but it still feels like oh, I'm gonna fuck with everybody kind of. That's like kind of like my. And I think everyone who's ever written anything has been guilty of this. I'm sure when we were Devin, we were writing like in creative fiction classes in college. It's like, man, I just wrote a straightforward story. I got to add a weird scene, and then I'm not going to. I think that is like, and I think the more you mature as a writer, the more you're like, actually, that stuff sucks. And if you can have weird scenes, but they should always come from a place of like, oh, like this scene fits here versus like this scene, and maybe it does fit there. So that's me being not generous. Now I will be generous, and I will say that maybe kind of going on with Ethan was saying. And Ethan, if I'm just repeating what you're saying in a worse way, I apologize. But like, it almost feels like this is maybe like what they think, like the Deadeye Jack. What's his name?
Johnny Deadeyes.
Johnny Deadeyes and Killer Lisa the Killer are like the conservative, straight talking like superhero personas that they think they are in their heads, because their people are trying to like kill them, they're trying to bomb them, and they're like, we're staying on the air and we're telling it like it is, and like it's important that we do this. And this is like maybe like in the moments before they die, as the bombs land on their station, they're like, this is their how they see themselves. I don't know.
Go ahead.
I think my point was drastically different, which was just generally that like the alternative of how you survive the virus, which is a virus of language, is that you only speak in these predictive ways that are super safe. And maybe that is like you follow into all the talking points and you do the things. I don't know that it was necessarily left or right, but
was that speech predictive to you at the very end?
It seemed like a hokey, like old-timey. It's like, oh, they just watched Casablanca and they're like doing a bit. That's what
it was like. It was cliche, I think, is what maybe what you want to say. It's like a generic cliche, and like, so this is where I want to again to continue my saw of giving this movie too much credit, right? But I can't watch this movie without thinking about the writer William S. Burroughs, who. And this is a little bit of a tangent, and I'm going to try to be brief, because I think like ultimately my critique of Burroughs and my critique of Pontypool are actually kind of the same, which is, so Burroughs has this very big, if you've ever read him, he writes these books that like make no sense when you read them. Like he literally will cut up the pages and mix them around. And like, it's really like, you can't give a plot summary of his books really in any meaningful way. They come across as very avant-garde, right? But like he has this theory that he, in the moments where his books make sense, he will just tell you, this is my theory. He'll kind of interrupt himself to do this, and is that language is a virus, right? Which is like, it's hard for me to think that this movie isn't explicitly drawing on Burroughs in that. And then he has these ideas that like we can hack the virus, right? And like he thinks as a writer, by making these books that like don't make any sense, that you, the reader, your mind is going to be like jumbled in some way that's going to shake you out of the complicity with reality, right? And that sounds really good and sounds really radical in theory, right? And he's someone who probably thought of himself as a revolutionary, but that idea historically ends up going in a very rightward direction, I think, politically. Like it becomes very libertarian because like the way like Burroughs's characters survive, right, is by doing exactly what in Ethan's read, like Johnny Deadeyes and Lisa the Killer are doing, which is they're just constantly moving from cliche to cliche. So like you read one of his novels and it's like you're in a pirate novel and then suddenly you're in like a hard-boiled detective novel and then you're in like a sci-fi novel and there's all these character names that but there's no characters, like there's no like psychology, there's no depth. It's just like it's just names. It's like and he's really into naming all of these like criminals and stuff and it's like you know it's like Johnny Yen, who you might know from like the Lust for Life song by Iggy Pop, or the Subliminal Kid. He's just like lists all these names, right? And so it's like that ends up becoming a very individualistic mode of resistance because it's all about like I can just keep you know improvising and moving from place to place and like the state won't be able to peg me down, but that also forecloses the possibility of like collectivity or like building a movement or like actually like organizing people because like Burroughs was terrified of organization, right? And I feel like this movie also can only imagine organization as like a negative thing, as a conservative thing, right? It's not able to imagine like could there be like uses of viral media that like have liberatory ends like that doesn't seem possible in the universe of the movie, right? And I think like that ultimately gets you in just this very like kind of anarchist but kind of libertarian like mode of being like an individual who doesn't want anyone to oppress you but you can't actually do anything to improve the world. All you can do is be like I'm Johnny Deadeyes now, so like yeah whatever. And like now you know I feel like the movie kept going on, they just keep becoming other people, but I don't know.
I love that read. I think it's really interesting. Wait, we go around the horn and be like, does the movie think Mazzy's good or bad? And I will start. I think the movie thinks Mazzy's bad. And again, it's not that simple. I'm not saying it's like direct villain, but like I think there's overall it's like what he's doing is bad.
Yeah. What about you, Ethan?
Ooh, because again, I'm in part of a camp where I think maybe this is like a fever dream of Mazzy imagining himself as the hero. So I feel like the overall theme is he's doing these things to try and stop the zombie apocalypse, even though he's a not a perfect character. But I think the undercurrent is that he's actually a piece of shit.
Yeah, man, you guys are really making me rethink it, right? Because like this was my second time watching this. And my first watch through, I definitely like unambiguously thought like Grant Mazzy was the hero of this movie. And I was just like, this movie rules because it's like wacky and weird, right? And then this watch through, I was like a little more frustrated with it. And I want to like, so my initial read watching it was like Grant Mazzy's the hero. And like this film is on the side of like the kind of renegade manipulating language thing, but I think I've been convinced across the pod by the by your guys' read that Mazzy's actually bad, and I actually think the film is better if Mazzy is bad, but it does position him as a hero, right? So it's complicated for me. I can't quite figure it out.
So your related question: did you read Atlas Shrugged? You're like, hey, that John Galt guy, he's got it together.
I did not read Atlas Shrugged, as it turned out. No.
Another thing that I thought was interesting that I noticed about this movie is like early in the movie before shit really starts, like every shot is moving. It's like swirling across every like literally there's not a shot once he gets in, there's not a shot that's not moving. It's someone going like this and like it's the camera's going like and like he's in there, it's go. And then once it starts, there's like not a moving shot. Everything's on sticks. It's static. I don't quite know if the movie's trying to like purport two different realities with the camera movement. But to me, it was very stark that they like were doing it. It felt like newsroom. Here we go, up in 30, and here we go, and today's news and the weather and blah 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 blah. And then it comes to a screeching halt once they get that first report in from that guy. I don't know if you guys noticed that or had thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, right? Like it feels like this movie's like it's definitely at its most visually interesting at the beginning. We also get those shot, like that opening shot of the audio wave that we talked about before. Like we get a lot of like more interesting, like the scene with him and the woman that knocks on his window is shot really interestingly. Yeah. And then it's like, it just kind of becomes, static shots of people in the office. And like, I don't know what, and until the final scene, right, where we get like a completely different, like kind of style, like where we're black and white and we're very stylized. So yeah, I don't know what that means. Yeah. Ethan, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think you could maybe read it as when they get into that recording room, it's meant to evoke this feeling of like we're sort of in control of things. I feel like that sort of went away. For me, there's a scene where it's right after I think they read how in French it had said in that message they got, like, do not translate this to English. Or maybe it was right after they heard Ken, what's his name?
Ken Loney and the Sunshine Chopper.
Yep, give his report where he's like playing the recording of the person who's been infected. They zoom in real close on Grant Massey's face. And it was very uncomfortable, I felt. And it was evoking the sense that, you know, you're not really in control. It was kind of claustrophobic the way they zoomed in. And then that to me kind of shifted the tone from this controlled focus of the first like 40 minutes or so to afterwards when things fall apart very quickly.
He also, Grant keeps looking under the desk in a way I did not know. Like there's like a sequence in the middle of this movie where he keeps looking on the desk, and I don't know if he's looking for his phone to call his agent or if he's looking for the cat.
I thought he was looking for the liquor.
Or the liquor, but he keeps looking and he looks wide-eyed. He keeps going, and I that was a part of the movie where I was like, I don't know what this means. Because it is, he calls Rick at the very beginning of the movie. He calls him and basically is like, "You're fired." He shows him how awful his job is, and then we never really hear from that character again. Although I think his phone does ring, and he does not pick it up later in the movie, right?
I think so. Yeah, because that's how I remembered who Rick was because it like shows him on the phone like his full name.
Right. It's something to that, which I think provides more support to Ethan's theory of like fever dream of like Rick is this is kind of like a linked reality of like when he's talking, like he only talks to Rick when things are normal. And basically every time he's not talking to Rick, which is most of the movie, you know, that's when things like come unglued. I don't know. Yeah. And I also think there's just part of it's like, just like this film, like, I think like this is just a common thing in horror movies, right? Where it's like horror movies like set up these like really interesting worlds, right? Like these evocative kind of creepy worlds, but then because of like the nature of the genre, they like can only do so much within them, right? So we get this really interesting kind of like world building early, and then just like most horror movies, or at least most like kind of like zombie or slasher movie type horror movies, it just has to be like, okay, now people are going to die in a certain order. It is, that's an interesting point. It is like a real tragedy of the genre that like you at some point have to start explaining things, because it's really like the mood you can make. If you could make a movie that just is constantly building a mood, and I'm sure there's I actually would be curious if you guys have any off the top of your head who like make a mood, like make the move into like what's happening in an interesting way that doesn't feel. I actually feel like the I'm gonna say his name wrong. The Yorgos Lanthimos movies do a pretty good job of that, where they throw you into the lobster and you're like, what's happening in the lobster, and like you kind of get everything slowly. but it never feels cheap, and it never feels like you're like, oh, that's what that was. It's like very stilted, and it never quite holds your hand on that, which like I think this movie does not do. This movie does a very good job in that, like in the setting the mood, and then it goes, and then Dr. Exposition crawls in and goes like, here's exactly what's happening, and the fact that they just go, that sounds right, is like
the movie stops committing to its own bit in that moment, right? I think you've convinced me of that, and like I'm thinking of like what comes to my head is The Shining, right? Really cliche one to say as like a great horror movie, right? But it is. Yeah, and Stephen King hated The Shining, right? The Kubrick Shining, and I think like I haven't actually seen the one, like there's a later adaptation that Stephen King was more involved in that I my understanding is very bad, but like imagine if like partway through The Shining, and like there's a little bit of exposition in it, right? But if like Catman Scruthers like got back into the hotel without getting immediately axed by Jack Nicholson, and then he just like gave a 10-minute monologue about like, here's why there's creepy things happening in the hotel, and like here's who the old lady is, and here's who the twins are, and like, you know, it's like that movie makes you figure that stuff out, and it has a respect for the viewer that they can do that, and like, or that you don't even need to, right?
I think it definitely is, and it also like you're just waiting for one of them to get infected when they're just like, okay, who's it going to be? It happens, and it somehow is like incredibly lame, where it's like she starts to do it. I just like it really becomes like such a different movie at that point. But kill me, like, but again, to the director's credit, I do think it comes like it's so over the top. I do think when she says "kill me, Grant," it is more related to the final end credit scene than it is to the rest of the movie. Like that to me is like where it sort of kicks in to like that last scene. So I do think like. Again, I'm legitimately not trying to be like this movie's like, I think we've been talking about it for like 2 hours, whatever. Like it is a movie that is interesting and with value. I just think it kind of like from a storytelling perspective, and from I think it has like a lot of failure. And then it's also making a point that like in 2021 me's tired of, which is unfair.
Well, a big problem with it that you just made me realize too is like such a big part of the zombie movie, which this kind of is a zombie movie, is the bite, right? Like there's always like you're part of the experience of watching a zombie movie is very clearly watching like the modes of transmission. Yeah. Right. Like where is the moment that like so-and-so gets scratched or gets bit? There's like a tussle, and then you know you see that shot of them, and then it's like, oh shit, that person's infected. In this movie, because it's a language virus, we never actually, people just kind of become infected at some point, but there's not a clear like, oh, somebody did this or somebody fucked up in this way, and that is like the reason the infection happened. And like maybe that makes it scarier in some way, because like the rules of the zombie movie won't protect you, but it also makes it like kind of like arbitrary.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, which it is, like it is throughout the course of the film. It's different rules at different points.
I mean, this movie also like makes a couple, I think, like zombie movie sins of like there's zombies at the gates. They're banging on the doors and they can't get in. And then it cuts to like 20 minutes of action. They're doing something, and then it cuts back to that same shot, and then the glass is broken. And it's like, well, that glass would have broken. Like they didn't take them 20 minutes to break that glass. It wasn't like it wasn't like this like super high paying glass. So it's like the rules of like how the zombies get in and how strong they are made no sense. And then like her running into the glass felt like it was borrowing from another movie, like I Am Legend or whatever that movie is, where like it just felt like it was borrowing that. And then like it didn't make sense. She never got anywhere remotely close to breaking that glass.
Tell me if I'm misremembering this, but when the zombies are attacking the radio station, aren't they speaking in the voices of the like main characters?
They very well, maybe that was lost. If they did, I missed that detail.
So
that would make sense though.
But they're at least repeating the stuff, because there's like the Sidney Breyer is alive like thing that they loop and they're projecting on the speakers, right? And so they're saying those words, at least like they're saying the stuff back to them. Like this is sort of the thing in the movie, right? Like anything you say is going to be like said back to you by the person that's then going to kill you, right? They're like
by the masses.
Yeah. So anyway, is there anything else we wanted to hit, or should we pass out our Shia LaBeoufs?
I want to just throw out real quick, like the indication of what sort of talk radio we thought that Grant Massey was, because it seems like, Devin, you're more in the camp that he's this kind of right-wing, like QAnon-y sort of talk radio with Grant Massey. Is that it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like Matt brought up Don Imus, but like the Don Imus thing where he got fired for calling women, I don't even want to say what he called them, but like look up Don Imus. That happened in like 2007, and this film came out in 2008. So I don't know if he's like a direct reference to Don Imus, but he definitely is in that tradition.
Oh, you the cowboy hat, yeah.
Did have the cowboy. Did y'all ever listen to Coast to Coast AM?
I never did, but yeah, like I vaguely know of this. So yeah, tell us about that.
I was just gonna say that like it kind of reminded me of Art Bell and Coast to Coast AM. Where like I would go out driving with my friends because that's what you do in Central PA. There's nothing else to do. And like we turn on Coast to Coast AM.
Don't you guys have like butter to churn or anything?
We'd already finished it for the evening. We finished it. The fields had been plowed. Like everything was good to go for the morning harvest. And so we would go out in the evenings and we like listen to Coast AM with Art Bell. And this kind of reminded me almost of that. And maybe it's because it's a zombie film. And it's like that's a topic they would talk about on Coast to Coast AM. Like, if there's a zombie apocalypse, I want to probably listen to Coast AM.
Yeah,
that's conspiratorial, a lot of aliens and like government conspiracies before that became like a QAnon thing. But that he kind of struck me as more of that. But again, I don't know if it's because it's literally a zombie-esque film and it made me think of Art Bell and that kind of thing or not, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know Art Bell well, but I think we've got to think of him as like an amalgamation, right? Like,
sure.
And I think that accords with sort of like some of the tensions we've been talking about throughout this pod, right? Where like this film is kind of like prevaricates between these sort of, its politics are very ambiguous, right? And I think like Grant Massey is like supposed to be this sort of like, he has this countercultural edge. He's like this cool guy, but then like at the same time, that same countercultural edge, like I was talking about with Burroughs, right, can very easily slide into right-wing directions, right? And I think like, it's like, it reminds me of like Patton Oswalt has a bit about like how like rock and roll just became like the music for right-wing radio at some point, and then it's like you turn on NPR and it's just like a lonely saxophone playing somewhere off in the distance, right? But it's like the sort of those kind of like, you think about it because like Art Bell kind of like he was a big influence on X-Files, right?
Yeah.
And X-Files was like this like kind of like lefty version of conspiracy, and like at least in like the dominant cultural discourse, conspiracy is now like the purview of the right? And like if you want to be a liberal, you're supposed to be like this like paragon devotee of like empiricism and objective truth, right? And like that definitely seems like a loser position to me too, but
and this is similar to what we talked about in the loose change episode of a lot of how that has evolved over time. But yeah, absolutely. I had to get out my little shout out to Coast AM in the early 2000s. So I think I'm ready for some Shia LaBeoufs.
All right. Well, so like as the guest of honor, Matt, do you want to lay us your Shia LaBeouf rating?
Can you explain the rating system just a little more to me before I weigh in?
Sure can.
It's out of how many Shia LaBeoufs?
It's well, I think the best way to show is by doing. So how about Ethan and I will go and then you can come in at the end. So so like Ethan, how many Shia LaBeoufs are we talking?
So I think this is a more complex equation than normally because I'm going to give it a 2.5 Shias, but times 1 over length into the film. And so you can see,
so it's like a graph.
Yeah, and in fact, I'm going to say 1 over length into the film squared. So you can see this is an exponential equation we're dealing with here, and it is not looking good by the end.
Wouldn't it be logarithmic?
It would not be. It would be exponential.
So if you had trouble following that, subscribe to our non-existent Patreon, where in the bonus episode, Ethan will be explaining math. All right, yeah. So I in the tradition of Pontypool, it's like I kind of love this film. You guys were a little hard on it. I'm convinced by a lot of your critiques. I still think it's a good time. So I just have to say that Shia LaBeouf is sheerly beef. Shia LaBeouf is sheerly beef. Shia LaBeouf is sheerly beef. Just like put some delay on that and let that like kind of go. Let that kind of fade out.
Or Ethan, don't put delay on that, but only put delay on his explanation of it.
What about you, Matt?
Well, I'd like to preface my review with a couple things. First of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. This has been delightful. It's been very fun. It's fun to like, first of all, hang out with old friends, but also to like have an assignment. I like being a 32-year-old man who just like has a job and whatever. Like it's just like, there's some sort of like event happening outside in my yard.
God. We're getting reports that there's a mob forming outside the apartment of
Matt,
Mr.
tell us,
Matt Powers.
what are you seeing out there, Matt?
from the Sunshine Chopper. I'd like to quote this movie before I decided to say, stop understanding and listen to me. Shia LaBeouf, I would give this 2 Shia LaBeoufs. Yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it.
Awesome.
Finn.
French, get it? It's in French.
We did one thing, not to then talk more about the movie now that we've closed the door, but we didn't talk a lot about why English was the only language that
Because it sucks.
Yeah, which like my read of it was like, oh, because like English is like obviously the imperialist like African, but then it's also like
unlike French.
So is French. Like, are you kidding me? So I thought that was like kind of, I thought that was like lazy. If that is the reason for it,
yeah, there might be something in that with like the sort of, because there's some references to sort of like Quebecois separatists throughout the movie, which I don't know much about, to be honest. Like I read Infinite Jest where that's like a thing. That's about all I know. But like maybe there's something with that where like, but that's a whole other can of worms. So before we get out of here, Matt, was there anything you wanted to plug? Anywhere like listeners can find you? Twitter handles, anything?
I very limited social media presence, but I am on Twitter at Matt Powers ESQ. If you want to like see me tweet 3 times a year and like see things get 6 hearts, I'm your guy. All
right, and you got a band, right?
It's just me recording, just me recording stuff in my apartment. But I will not plug that.
All right.
I like how you're setting the parameters of what he will plug.
If you want to listen to my music, send me a DM on Twitter. I'll send it to you.
And I understand you have a MySpace that hasn't been updated since 2009. Can you tell us some more about that?
I would like to plug the exclusive document, actually. I'm not sure our music still exists. I'm like I read it like every like couple years. I'm like, oh, I want to listen to it, and I try to find a MySpace, and it's not there.
So for listeners, just Ethan, myself, and Matt, we're all in a band called The Exclusive Document when we were at Penn State. Yeah, instead of the normal closing music, use Tigers and Dumpsters, which I just want to say Matt wrote the guitar riff to. Yeah,
I wrote
so
GC.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. Coming to you live from Morning with Mazzies. It's Exclusive Document with Tigers in Dumpsters.
you're just too